The season may be over for the Giants, but the Brian Daboll controversy is just beginning. What is going on, guys? What is going on, 27 Squad? Welcome back into another video, and it's late. I'm probably going to be editing this video late. I took a nap earlier. I'm okay. I am very happy this weekend as we got the Dallas Cowboys losing yesterday and the Philadelphia Eagles losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers tonight. It just happened, and I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. I just want to say this is the time of the year. If you guys know a Cowboys fan, odds are one of you guys know a Cowboys fan. Make sure you watch them, look out over them, and keep those cups of water away from them because, man, in January, it's a real choking hazard.
Are you okay?
But nonetheless, here, Monday, Martin Luther King's Day, Pat Leonard, who is, I guess, a very polarizing beat writer for the New York Giants, came out with his own article to combat or respond to Paul Schwartz's article that was kind of pro Brian Daboll, kind of showing Brian Daboll's side of things. And Pat Leonard, it seems to have been a response from the other side, which is what we were asking for, begging for at this point. Now, I did have to pay money for this one, guys. I did have to pay money for this article. So if you guys want to find a way to support, just comment down below, hit that like button. Anything that helps the algorithm out is more than enough. And if you guys really want to go above and beyond, you guys can hit that join membership down below, and it'll help my channel out a lot. So this article wastes no time, and if I know anything about reading articles all the time, there's usually an introduction, a brief little recap, an introduction. What are we getting into? This article goes right into it. They're giving dates, times, where it's at, everything. Wink Martindale's defense had forced 4 turnovers. Thomas McGahee's special team unit had forced another. And Mike Kafka's offense, with Tommy DeVito at quarterback, had scored 2 of its 3 touchdowns on short fields off of those takeaways. But now Washington's offense was driving, aided by Kayvon Thibodeau's roughing the passer penalty outside of the red zone, and that's when Brian Daboll started playing the blame game on Martindale and the defensive staff. Quote, "You're gonna lose this game just like you lost us the Jets game," Daboll griped on the headset, according to numerous sources in the building. That's very interesting there, how, if this is true, and I have no reason to not believe this, we're going to get into it later, but there are some facts in here that are kind of combated by previous facts that we knew about, even going back last year, which we'll get into. But I have no reason to not believe this, but that is very interesting. Brian Daboll, and this whole article kind of goes over it, he really just plays the blame game on absolutely everybody. It doesn't seem like he's really a guy that takes a lot of accountability for his own team, because he is the head coach. And someone like Mike McDaniel, a lot of people really thought looked like a pushover of a coach, right? Small, little, fragile guy, but he really takes accountability with his team. Really is talks man to man with the coaches and the players.
Yeah, I called some trash fucking plays. That will fucking happen. Just like you'll have bad plays. You know what makes me a fucking man? Is that I don't blink at that, nor do I avoid it. I'm gonna learn from that. You don't get mad. You don't get sad. That.
And it just doesn't seem like Brian Daboll is that type of character. He even blamed the Jets game on Wink Martindale, which, if you guys know anything about me and watch my channel during that time last year, I was going off on Brian Daboll, how he was not given the trust to Tommy DeVito to just throw the ball. And if you didn't trust him to throw the ball, why do you have him as your backup quarterback at all? Like, even if you don't expect him to play, you should be putting guys out there, or should be putting guys on that roster that you trust in. And they did not trust him at all, Brian Daboll in particular. And that team had minus negative passing yards in that game. And they spammed Saquon Barkley the entire game, did not throw the ball. And somehow Daboll blames Wink Martindale. And I said this ever since that game. That was one of the games where I really thought the defense really played their part in. There were a couple of games, the Patriots game, the Jets game, the Washington game, pretty much all the games that we won in, the Giants defense really played a huge role in. Even some games that we lost, like the Buffalo game, that game was very defense orientated. Even the Miami game where we gave up a lot of yards, but that was the first game that we actually had turnovers in, and we even had a pick six, and we still couldn't capitalize due to the offense. Now, it also said that the finger pointing and the blaming was so bad that Schoen felt like he needed to join in on the headset during game days when they're calling plays and doing all that sort of stuff. Now, it also says that he took that from Nick Caserio's playbook and also Will McClay from the Dallas Cowboys, and how they're kind of implementing that, where the GM is also on the headset as well, just to listen in. I don't think he's giving input, but just listening in on what goes on during game days. Now, Schoen listened in to 4 games that the Giants played in, and those 4 games being the Saints, the Patriots, the Commanders, and the Packers, I believe. And 3 out of those 4 games, the Giants won. So I don't know what impression he got in those games. We did get blown out in that Saints game, so maybe you saw a lot of angry things going on. Or maybe even Brian Daboll was the same way he was when they won games. I don't know. But listen, you can tell Brian Daboll is a very, very emotional dude. I'm not giving defense to him whatsoever, but there is a positive and negative for being someone with authority leading a football team, having way too much emotion, not enough stoicism going on for Brian Daboll. And that's something I really think he needs to work on, because you even go back to last year, right, where I made that whole highlight video for Brian Daboll, how much he was getting hyped up in the games that we won, but it also seems like he gets very angry in the games that we lose. Like, it's very hard to control his emotions, whether they're positive or negative. You saw that Tennessee game where he went completely crazy, pumping up the crowd and everything. You saw the Green Bay game after we won in London, him going, let's effing go, to like kind of acting like a player in a sort of way. You really don't see coaches acting that way. And I'm not saying that's anything bad, but you can really tell that he's an emotional guy, positive or negative. He really kind of displays the same kind of emotion and doesn't really hold anything back, whether it be positive or negative. Also says here that Brian Daboll's sideline behavior was destructive in many coaches' opinions. His inputs were never proactive, always reactionary, and his outrage was rarely accompanied by a suggested solution. He has no composure, one team source said. I do like how Pat Leonard did preface this, and I don't like Pat Leonard at all. I'll just say that right now. I don't care if even he's listening to this or watching this, but I do respect the fact he did put in there that the story of the Giants' 2023 undoing isn't about a personal feud between Daboll and Martindale and the past, though. It's about the bad football and flawed process that still exists inside the Giants' walls. It's about an organization with enough problems that one Giant staffer recently advised an NFL assistant calling about the vacancy, do not come here. That is not something you ever want to hear from your fan base, from a staffer within your fan base saying, do not come here. That doesn't make me feel good as a fan of the Giants at all. They also said Brian Daboll completely going off on coaches is not anything new to this year. It also happened in 2022. It said that he eviscerated plenty of people in 2022, like former running backs coach DeAndre Smith, who left the Colts last season. Daboll also lit into Daniel Jones twice in 2 years, throwing a tablet in disgust next to the quarterback after Jones' week 4 pick 6 against the Seahawks. We all remember that one. Now we're going to get into Mike Kafka. Now, Mike Kafka has kind of been looked at as like the little poor kid alone at the lunch table and everybody feels bad for. He's a grown adult. I don't know why we keep babying him, but I do feel bad for Mike Kafka. But I think we got to stop treating him like a little kid. He's not a little kid. I don't know if it's because he has a little bit of a baby face and he's bald or whatever. He kind of looks easy to feel bad for, but he's a man like everybody else. But let's just get into it. It says here that Kafka, however, has received the brunt of Daboll's fury. According to numerous team sources, he is constantly second-guessed. And listen, this is no surprise that Mike Kafka has been under the spotlight, even from the fan base. A lot of people have lit up Mike Kafka on Twitter, on YouTube, going over like they don't like his play calling. And there was actually controversy that Mike Kafka relinquished his play calling. Well, not relinquish, kind of had it taken away from him by Brian Daboll, and we saw Brian Daboll calling plays on the sideline. It was later it was later denied by Brian Daboll that he was not calling plays, but everybody knew he was calling plays. And I've said this time and time again, when Brian Daboll or any head coach, any GM in the NFL, in any sport, they have no obligation to tell you the truth. They are allowed to lie right into your face. As long as it's not legally bound, as long as they're not under some sort of oath, they have no obligation to tell you the truth. So take everything they say with a grain of salt, because it's most likely very cookie cutter, very non-controversial, even if it's not the truth. He would make Kafka run the ball, and then if he called a run, Daboll didn't like it, he would mother F him. I don't know what that means. It says a source said. I don't know. We can go into detail. What does that mean? Does he like Kafka did something that Daboll doesn't like and he just goes, mother? Like, I don't know. What does that mean? Now, this article confirms that Brian Daboll took play calling from Mike Kafka, so there's no more speculation. It confirms it as far as we know. I have no reason to not believe this. And it also says quarterback coach Shea Tierney even called some plays. That's something I didn't see coming. Daboll took play calling from Mike Kafka multiple times, according to sources, and gave it back each time. He gave it to quarterback coach Shea Tierney for the second half at Dallas in Week 10, per sources. Now, this is something I do not agree with whatsoever. Just like how when you have a starting quarterback, say a young starting quarterback, and you start him day one, we'll use a random example like a Caleb Williams, for example. If he goes to any team and you start him day one and then he starts playing poorly, you don't just bench him. You don't do it. The same way how when you see a lot of veteran quarterbacks who have a quarterback drafted, to eventually take their place, and that older quarterback is playing. Oh, okay, Eli Manning and Daniel Jones situation. Very easy example to follow. 2019, the Giants drafted Daniel Jones with the number 6 overall pick, and they did not start him. They rode with Eli Manning for about 2 games, and they did not look back. They brought in Daniel Jones and did not look back. Even though there were times that he struggled, they did not look back, and Eli Manning did not start the rest of the year because you'll mess up a quarterback's psyche if you let him start a couple games and automatically he's doing terribly and you bench him again. You just don't do that, especially if he's a high draft pick. You just don't do it. Well, the same thing is with play callers. I don't think you should be constantly taking the play calling away from Mike Kafka. If you don't trust Mike Kafka, then you don't trust Mike Kafka and take play calling completely. Like Pat Shurmur in his time here was the play caller. He was basically OC and head coach. We had Mike Shula here as offensive coordinator. He was basically a quarterback's coach. I mean, that's pretty much what he was. He was not the offensive coordinator here. Pat Shurmur called the plays. So if you're going to call plays and you don't trust Mike Kafka, that's fine. There are plenty of situations where the offensive coordinator does not call plays. I'm pretty sure Mike McCarthy called his own plays in Green Bay, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure he did that at some point. Jason Garrett called his own plays with Dallas. And I'm pretty sure Matt LaFleur calls his own plays in Green Bay right now. So listen, there are head coaches that call their own plays all the time. That's not an issue. The issue is constantly taking away that ability and giving it back to him as if it's like he's under punishment, and you're like giving back. It's like punishing your kid for not having good grades, and then I guess enough time has gone by and you give him back his Xbox. It's not right. You're treating him like a child, and it's also kind of diminishing his integrity as an offensive coordinator. It kind of is almost treating him like a child, treating him like he's not a coach. And it's kind of embarrassing to have that happen to you when you have people that look up to you like the players. Daboll's unpredictability, one source said, was his defining trait. There is no pattern, no rhyme or reason to his changes from others' perspective. Here's one thing I do a little bit disagree on here. Daboll's unpredictability with his changes and that there's no pattern, rhyme, or reason. To be fair, as head coach, Brian Daboll does not need a rhyme, reason, anything like that, or pattern, whatever that Pat Leonard said. He doesn't need a reason. He's the head coach. Whatever he says goes. If you don't listen, you can get the hell out. That, whether you like it or not, Daboll's in charge. He doesn't need a reason. You just do it. I don't agree with Brian Daboll, but that can't be anything against him because that is how he wants to lead the team. I mean, we could disagree on it, but he's not doing anything wrong. There's nothing that is like against the rules. It's very heavily like ill-advised, but it's not against. It's not like he can't do that. He could do that. It's just not advisable. He didn't give complete control to Kafka until week 11, after the offense had averaged 11.75 points during that 1-3 stretch. With Kafka back at the reins, the Giants scored 24 or more points in 5 of their final 7 games, but Brian's impulsive nature also reared its head in how he mismanaged game situations in losses. Now, it kind of goes into Brian Daboll's time management. I don't really care too much about that because we all know Brian Daboll has bad time management, and that's not anything. That's something you just disagree on the coach with. Decision that you disagree with the coach with. That's not really going into this controversy. I think Pat Leonard is just trying to dunk on Brian Daboll real quick here. Trust me, I have a lot of problems with Brian Daboll and his coaching decisions, but that's not really relevant right now. He also tried to blame the Tyrod Taylor checking to a run play on Brian Daboll. It says here in this article. That is kind of stupid, but listen, there are plenty of other things to blame Brian Daboll on. That Tyrod Taylor play was completely Tyrod Taylor. There's also a complaint that Brian Daboll, has these weekly meetings with people that do analytics in that department, and they kind of go through game situations and prepping and stuff like that. Daboll receives advice on his headset in those moments from an analytics and game management team, but one source called the collaboration a broken process, saying it's not thorough or advanced. And regardless of what is discussed during the week, Daboll's game day decisions become up for grabs, impulse with calls without guardrails. It's like, wait, what do we have the meeting for? The source said. There's a lot of inconsistency or doing the direct opposite of what we had talked about. The rest of the league is too far ahead, and you see it affecting the results of games. I can agree. I think if Brian Daboll does not want to work with the analytics, he should just flat out tell them, I'm not working with the analytics. I want to do my own thing here. Maybe this is something that's forced upon Brian Daboll to go over analytics, but we've seen in this Eagles game how analytics can really mess you up in a game. We've seen Brendan Staley, the analytics god, former head coach for the Chargers, heavily relied on analytics. Did not work. Got him fired. Nick Sirianni missed out on plenty of opportunities to get points and went with analytics in this playoff game against the Bucs, and it wound up ending up with 0 points off of those analytic plays. So analytics are not the be-all end-all. Maybe Brian Daboll absolutely hates analytics. That's something he should be vocal about. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if these type of things are forced onto the head coaches because the game is evolving along with advanced statistics and analytics and game scenarios and predictabilities and stuff like that. Maybe that's something that's forced on Brian Daboll. He doesn't like it, but he should flat out say, hey, I don't like any of this stuff. I really want to just do my own thing instead of wasting these guys' time thinking that they're doing something productive. Now, here's where we get to a little bit of contention here, where we talk about that Week 10 game. Everybody knows, or if you guys don't know, that Paul Schwartz article was edited. The part when they talk about the Week 10 blowout game to Dallas, where there was originally a part where Wink Martindale seemed to have been selling the game, just absolutely blitzing, and with a depleted secondary, and kind of having the Giants to force to work with that, and having the Giants defensive backs to force to work with that and force to cover when the Giants heavily blitz. And then it was later changed to Brian Daboll heavily advised that Wink Martindale to stick with the plan and keep blitzing the Dallas Cowboys, when prior it completely changes the narrative to make it seem like Wink Martindale was selling those games and trying to get fired and doing everything he could to make bad decisions and get him fired from the team. And that article was changed. But there is some talk about the Week 10 blowout loss here. It says Daboll was ripping the defense so frantically and constantly after positive Cowboys plays that it was interfering with Martindale's play calling process. Several sources and Martindale asked Daboll to stop so he can get the play in. The next week, Schoen was on the headset to monitor the situation for himself. You're living on the edge every week, a source said working for Daboll. It makes it tough to do your job. Now, this is where the article gets pretty damn juicy. Now, we all know around the same time at this point last year, there was an article that came out based off of a Ty Dunn comment. I don't know who Ty Dunn is, but this is what the comment is from. I guess he's close to the Giants or whatever. That Brian Daboll was intentionally calling plays to Wink Martindale during training camp to test Daniel Jones. I don't know if I'm jogging you guys' memory, but I remember that article, and I remember those storylines where the Daniel Jones during training camp, when he first met the new defense, and Wink Martindale was absolutely getting demolished by the defense. Heavy blitzes, was relentless, and Brian Daboll was a part of it because he wanted to test Daniel Jones out, to have him face some adversity, and yada, yada, yada. Apparently, Pat Leonard, with little to no sources, says that is not true whatsoever. There were signs from the first day of last year's training camp that the Daboll-Martindale dynamic would not work. When the offense struggled to start camp, Daboll allowed a perception to grow that he had tipped off the defense to play calls in order to create a challenge for Jones. But in reality, according to sources, was that Martindale's pressure packages were giving the offense fits. So Daboll told Martindale that he was putting a limit on his blitzes for the rest of camp. That set the tone for the offense versus defense coaching culture that did not go in the offense's favor, especially this season. Now, I don't know how much of that is true. Like I said, all the other things, I cannot say that I don't believe it because I don't have anything that combats it. However, there were articles, multiple reports last season, and I feel like it was true. A whole year later, somebody coming out saying that's not true and having no anything to cite for it, not even a name. There's no names in here whatsoever. It's always a player said, a source said, someone close to the team said, a team source, a coaching source said. There's no names in here whatsoever. Everything is completely 100% anonymous. Now, that's not to mean that it's not true, but it's very hard to believe these sort of things when we have nothing to trace it back to. And then the rest of the article kind of goes over the whole McKinney and Wink Martindale situation. We kind of went over that in the last video we did of this controversy, of this debacle. So I'm not going to go too heavily into it. It just pretty much says that Daboll really didn't like how Wink Martindale went after McKinney publicly, and he wanted to keep everything in-house. And then after that following game, he made Xavier McKinney break the team down to kind of spite Wink Martindale. And then the next week, he gave the game ball to Wink Martindale, I guess to be a little bit petty. I don't know. A lot of people really read into that too much. I don't really care for that as much. I feel like that was just a way of Brian Daboll trying to be as non-controversial as he can while still being a little bit petty, but I don't think it's anything more than that. Bottom line, both these coaches need some reflecting to do, okay? There is no coincidence that Wink Martindale is now on looking for another team, his third team in the span of 3 years. I mean, he was there with John Harbaugh in Baltimore for quite a bit. I think 4 years, and things seem to have been going perfectly fine. There was a situation that went down. Nobody knows to this day. Nobody's investigating what the hell happened between him and John Harbaugh. And apparently they mutually agreed to part ways. Now, Baltimore is not that big of a market as New York is, obviously, so you're not going to get a lot of people getting into that, and that's going to be on the hush-hush probably forever. But we'll never know what happened over there with Baltimore, but it wasn't good. We all know it wasn't good. We just brushed it under the rug because Wink Martindale is a great defensive coordinator, and he's coming to the Giants. I brushed it under the rug, so did you guys. It's okay to admit that. But now that things are coming out, it's fair to ask the question, what is up with Wink Martindale, and why is he so ass mad with these head coaches? Now, Brian Daboll is not without fault as well. There's a lot of fault to give Brian Daboll as well. I was one of the first people on YouTube to start blaming Brian Daboll because everybody after the season thought he was an absolute god, an absolute one of the best coaches in the NFL. I had thought that for a reason, for a little bit as well. I thought Brian Daboll was ascending as one of the better coaches in the NFL. However, with his play calling decisions, game management decisions, I didn't like his attitude on the sideline as well. I was really blaming Brian Daboll for a lot of that was going on early on in the season when everybody had their fingers pointed at Daniel Jones. I had my finger also pointed at Brian Daboll. But Brian Daboll really needs to reflect himself and not be so emotional find some stoicism, even in the positive times. Because listen, if you are way too over emotional in the positive times when you're winning and you're going F yeah, F this, let's go, pumping your fist, odds are you're going to be the same exact way when you're losing games. Find some stoicism and be a leader. Be a leader. Just, you know, on to the next week, man. On to the next week, and hold your coaches accountable. Hold yourself accountable in a very respectable and I guess a way that everybody can work together and kind of have that camaraderie, man. Because we want to build a culture over here. I thought there was a culture being built over here. That does not seem to be the case. So yeah, Brian Daboll has to find a way to be a little bit more stoic in his manner as head coach. And if you want to be all rah-rah, go be a motivational speaker. Go be a strength and conditioning coach. Go back to being an offensive coordinator for all I care. Just don't do that as head coach. Be a leader, man. Be a leader. Tom Coughlin. Listen, a lot of this really reminds me of Tom Coughlin. If you guys watch any documentary on Tom Coughlin's time here, he was an absolute asshole. Michael Strahan hated. He even said it on the Giants' life, or I mean a football life, highlighting Tom Coughlin. He said, in his words, he hated. That's a strong word. He hated Tom Coughlin. However, Tom Coughlin reflected on himself, changed his ways, changed how he acted, and they went on to win 2 Super Bowls. So there is a little bit of reflection that needs to happen. There are some times where, you know, a lot of testosterone is in the room, and, you know, everybody tries to see who's a bigger person. Some people, you know, overuse and abuse their power as well. So that being said, guys, that is the update. I don't know if we're ever going to get another update besides this, since both sides kind of told their story. I don't know if there's going to be another response to it from Brian Daboll's side or another response from Wink Martindale's side. But that being said, guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Leave a like if you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you guys are new. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Woo!